Right, welcome to Rambling Achieved. Will be something a little bit different today. I think we've done similar-ish stuff like this over on Brandon's channel, where we've given like first impressions, or we've even done like post reviews and stuff like that. But I just wanted to give this a go, see how I felt about it, which is just going to be my Code Vein 2 first impressions. I've put out on the sister channel, which is where I just post all the footage so that I can have it pulling in, as you can see here. I think I've done about 6 parts. They're roughly about 30 minutes each. So a few hours in, and yeah, just wanted to talk about it because I've seen obviously the first game wasn't something that set the world alight, and I don't think this is going to be something that will also set the world alight. It's definitely targeted towards a very specific, genre, being a Souls-like game and a fandom and stuff like that. There's very specific quirks that both the first game and this game have that I can definitely see will turn people off, and people won't want to be wanting to experience it or have the patience to learn and stuff like that. But yeah, just wanted to talk about it, give my first impressions, because when I did the what I played in December, I obviously said that I won't be ranking stuff that I've played. It's only ranking stuff that I've finished. So this is kind of a way of still being able to talk about it while it's relevant, somewhat, because this isn't. I don't know how long the game is. I don't imagine it's short, given what we'll get into later with the design of the game. But I wanted to make sure to talk about it while it's still semi-relevant. So yeah, let's kick things off with the character creator. I believe the first game also had an insanely deep character creator. Um, it's not something that I'll personally ever delve too deep into. A lot of the time when they're this deep, I will say I do appreciate it, because you can get really creative people on the internet that are very talented, and then they'll just post character builds, which you can just basically mimic and stuff like that. So I personally didn't spend a lot of time in this, but I do want to give it praise because it is very, very extensive. I don't know if that's particularly shocking anymore. It seems like it's a little bit to be expected almost at this point for many games of this type. So yeah, it's not like setting the brand new standard. It's just more or less the same, which the first games was absolutely incredible. And yeah, you can get very, very silly with the hats and the different stuff like that. And it made me laugh because that preset, it just reminded me of Indie Mouse, and I was like, yeah, I'll take that. So it's like a, a kind of Indie Mouse looking main character, which did make me laugh. So yeah, that'll be the first thing that I wanted to highlight for the game. I should also clarify, it's just going to be using the footage of the very first like opening hour. So if you don't want any like this cutscene and stuff like that spoiled for you, definitely just either listen, because I'm not going to touch upon any of the narrative, or skip ahead. There'll be timestamps for different stuff. But next up is kind of par for the course with the genre. I don't think you get really many, if at all, not named, voiced main characters, and that's the same here. Your character is one without a voice. They voice when you get hit and stuff like that, which is what you can choose in your character creator, but your character will not be speaking at all. So a little bit disappointing. That's the next thing I hope that they do add to one of these games. It does feel a little bit strange when people are expositioning to you all of this lore dump, all of the like woes and worries and stuff like that, and your character just stares there, bug-eyed, looking back, and then just has a very mute expression. So unfortunately, that's not something that they added, but I'll be honest, I don't think anyone's expecting it. It's just kind of like a, yeah, that'd be cool if they ever did that next step. But yeah. Then this is kind of unfortunate. This is going to come off sounding like I have a lot of issues with the game, which I happily don't shy away from critiquing the stuff that I love. So before I start hammering home these criticisms, I will say I love this game. This game is amazing. I really, really am impressed with Bandai doing what they've done here, because they didn't have to go as hard as they did. It seems like they've looked at what Elden Ring was, and what it achieved, and the ambition set there by FromSoft, and they seem to have mimicked a lot of that. They just obviously don't have as much talent as FromSoft has. So there are certain things where they have to cut corners, or it just is a little bit more biting off than they can actually manage. And one of the things that the biggest criticism is the performance. And that's across the board. I'm not even like, you see a lot of the people who are giving early coverage and opinions on it, frame rates are very, very shaky and wobbly. And that's because, like I said, with it being Elden Ring inspired, it's a huge open world map. Like, these aren't tiny zones anymore. They've gone above and beyond and have basically remade Limgrave and stuff like that from Elden Ring. I don't know when I pull up the map, but it was like astonishing when I was looking at it. I was like, damn, this is huge. So I can understand why it's struggling a little bit. The other thing, though, is the texture popping is really, really aggressive in some areas, and I will have to also caveat, I'm playing this. This would have been captured about 2 or 3 days before the official normal release, because I bought the deluxe edition, so it allowed me to play a few days early, so it doesn't have the quote-unquote day one patch, so hopefully stuff like that does get addressed, because that's the type of stuff that should be easy to fix. But yeah, it was very, very noticeable, of almost being like taking me back to the 360 days of when a game was tackling open world for the first time and it just had terrible texture popping. When you'd look across like a body of water and it was just like a flat block texture, and then it loaded in as a water kind of thing. That's the level that you're dealing with in parts here, which is kind of unfortunate, but like I said, it shouldn't be very difficult to iron out, if I'm being honest. Like, they should have this stuff down very, very quickly. Then, yeah. So wobbly frame rates, as I said, it's just, again, just ambition, trying to make it completely open world, and it is just struggling because there is a lot going on. There's like a very aggressive weather system that can change day-night cycles and stuff like that. And you had this same stuff with Elden Ring, but Elden Ring kind of came out and did a pretty good job. I know it's kind of struggling, I think, on the Switch too, with people getting their hands on preview of that. I don't know if that's released yet, but on stuff like PS5 and Series X and PC, like, it seemed to be a lot better than this at 1.0, because people on PC are also seemingly having a lot of trouble with frame rates and stuff like that. So again, very, very unfortunate, but I'm sure they'll figure this stuff out very, very quickly. So there's a few negatives, because I'm going to try and split like negatives and then throw in a bit of positives and then some negatives, just to make sure it's not just droning on and bashing it, because it's not. I don't feel that way about the game. I don't feel that it's an overly negative experience. I think this is a really, really cool game. So we'll be moving on to a little bit more of a positive now. Okay, you're gonna have to bear with. I hope the mouse picks up. If it doesn't, you're just gonna have to follow with what I'm saying. But the first thing I want to shout out to the game is its build diversity potential. I'm not somebody who gets heavily into the weeds of making the most meta build or the best things. Like, I'll usually find a weapon that I enjoy the feel of, and that's it. Like, I'll try and stick to that type of weapon category, and find things that just feel good in that way. But this game just has a very interesting shake-up of the usual Souls-like formula. As you can see here on the left side is the weapon stats itself. So whatever you're hovering on will give you its scalings of whatever it is. But interestingly enough, you have very much like any other Souls-like, for the most part, very few of them don't have this mechanic, but you have like an equip burden. However, it's not weight related in this game, it's statistic related. So you see over here on the right, where it says attributes and burdens and stuff, you have these numbers here underneath each of these categories, and that's your fixed number. And then whatever you're equipping will be the number below it, I believe. And then you're basically having to, with each weapon they have, I can't remember what it's called. I'm trying to see if I can find it on the screen. No. So you have 3 different things, I believe, where if you're underneath the threshold, so say you needed 10 strength and you come in at 7, there are certain weapons that will give you a positive buff, for instance. You'll also just have some stuff that comes naturally equipped, so there doesn't have to be a threshold met. It will just do, say, innate poison damage, and doesn't need anything activated. And then the more interesting thing is that with this burden system, with the 10 strength example again, if you went and equipped something and that pushed you over to 12 strength as an example, it would then give you a burden modifier, which will then give you a positive related to that, but also a negative drawback. So kind of like a good way of explaining it is the floor system in the Outer Worlds, where it gives you a positive, but also a negative. And yeah, I thought that was really, really cool from them, thinking outside of the box and just doing stuff a little bit different. Also down here, you have your weapon forme, or former, and that's just basically your Ashes of War from Elden Ring, where you're able to slot them in. Weapons will come pre-equipped with them, and I believe you can just have 4. I don't think there's a way of expanding that. And then, yeah, that's your stuff that you're going to be putting like self buffs on or special weapon attacks and stuff like that, and having to manage this currency. So each of these things will cost. So something on this list has free handling, or 2 and 1, as an example. And you can't, I don't believe you can go over that. I believe that has to be, that's like a hard cap, unlike the actual burden system, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, just a really, really cool shift up, because that's when you're getting into these. What I'll do is play it so some stuff can be playing now in the background. What you start to see in these Souls-likes is fatigue of using the same systems and then not really shaking it up all that much. So this was at least a fairly big shake-up, which was kind of cool. So yeah, I really do appreciate that. I'm trying to think of a way of describing this, the perfect word for this. So the combat, for lack of a better term, it feels rooted, is what I'll say. You can tell that I'm not a journalist and stuff like that. Can't think of a better word of describing it, but I think that will do in the way of describing it. You're very, when I say rooted, meaning when you're committing to an action, you kind of have to see it through to the end. There's not like fluidity in the sense of like Sekiro or Devil May Cry and stuff like that. Like it's not that level of fast, responsive snappiness. Like this feels much more traditional Souls-like combat, which I can appreciate. I do like that a lot, so it's why it's vibing with me as much as it is. However, with that comes the negatives of why we've seen these games speed up over time, both from player animations and actions and enemy actions and animations. You seem to be a lot slower as a character when you're committing actions, when you're locked on with the camera, compared to the enemies. And it's probably about 2 and a bit hours in. I'd say like the first proper boss challenge absolutely wiped the floor with me a few times. And it's because you think that you have a lot more snappiness than you do, and you don't. It's kind of a weird adjustment thing. Let me just make sure to skip through this because I don't want to spoil any narrative stuff. But yeah, you think you have a lot more snappiness, and it unfortunately doesn't. But it's just one of them things where it's also just a learning process. Whenever you're booting up a new Souls-like experience, it can be you're just trying to learn what's going to work and what isn't, and you're learning all the little what do you call it, the quirks of the game, which I'm still even 6 parts in at 30 minutes a piece, several hours in, and I'm still getting used to it a little bit. Has a weird thing with the health bar system as well. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, there's you're gonna have to forgive me being partially colorblind. That's either yellow or green, what your normal health bar is on the bottom, and then it has a blue thing. So your health bar is split into 2, and I believe the blue is determined by like your summon. So you can also suck the summon inside of you because he's basically given part of his heart, which is why he's accompanying you. So you're able to either have them as like a physical entity with you, and they'll give you combat help, or you can pull them inside of you and they'll give you statistical bonuses, which is really cool. But you're very, very squishy in this game in the beginning. I don't know if that's going to change at all. But yeah, there's not a lot of room for error. You can get absolutely punished. A cool thing about it is that your summon, I believe, if he's alive and you fall, he will resurrect you and then disappear, I believe, for a little bit, or use one of your consumables and stuff like that. So there is a decent amount of forgiveness at the same time, and it's all just, like I said, getting used to it. But yeah, back to the lock-on camera. That's something that will be easy to fix. They just need to, I don't know, just modify it so it just tracks a little bit snappier, because it does just seem to be a bit slow. It's kind of the whole game in general, being a little bit slow, because even when you're talking to character NPCs and they're delivering their lines of dialogue, I'm going to give an example. So they'll turn around and say, like, welcome. And that's the length of pause between, and then they'll go to their next line and give like a 5-second pause, and it feels very, very, very unnatural. But again, that should be, of all the things I've griped about, should be the easiest fix, because you just need to shorten the time between the next dialogue. I should also look, I'll add this in as a comment if that's in like a settings option somewhere and I can manually adjust that. I don't think you can, but I'll have a look. But yeah, that was like bizarre. Little bit of a This is a little bit of a disappointment for me. I don't know if this is going to be like a universal thing that's going to let people down. There's no co-op this time. So you're entirely accompanied by an NPC, but there's no actual multiplayer co-op with real people. Kind of unfortunate. I went through the entirety of the first game with a friend, and we had a lot of fun 100%ing it. So it is a little bit disappointing that it's going to be a solo venture this time. But with the stuff that they've added, I can kind of see why. You know, they're struggling enough with a solo player commanding as much attention as the game needs. So maybe that's something that they could explore down the line, a DLC or an update. I don't think that they will. I think it's kind of heavily designed in mind to be a solo adventure. But that's fine. Oh, here you go. That's the map, as you can see. It's very Elden Ring-esque as well. But yeah, just unfortunate. But yeah, I won't hold that too much against it, because I think it's been very deliberately made with the emphasis on these characters more so. So yeah. Alrighty, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a warning here. If you don't want to know, it was in the trailer, so, but I'll be a little bit cautious for some people. What I'm going to be talking about next could be considered a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear about that, move on. It's a mechanic in the game. So yeah. Let me go ahead and... Right. So, as in the trailer, they show you that there is a vehicle that you're able to use. And it's kind of surprising, because when they showed it, it was a kind of like 50-50 split, because you're thinking in your mind, so many games use them as like cutscene pieces, or very, very on the rails kind of thing. They don't actually let you use, like, it's easy to picture like a horse and stuff like that, less so a motorbike or a buggy or stuff like that. So it's kind of really cool that no, you get this bike. It is your mount in the game, and just works really well. Obviously, it still comes with the performance issues, unfortunately, a little bit of stuttering here and there. But when that's all worked out and stuff like that, like, this is really, really cool. Unfortunately, I only have like the very beginning of getting the bike, as this was the very last part that I captured before finishing up for today. But really impressed with just how like snappy it just felt hopping on it and like driving around a little bit. very easy to summon. I don't believe you can drive it everywhere. I believe it said on the pop-up. But yeah, it's really cool that isn't just some fixed on rails like kind of mechanic. I would have been very, very disappointed if that would have been the case. So very, very happy to see that is just part of the game. Oh, all right. I think I can probably roll this back to where is it? Yeah. So the difficulty spike, I think, is going to be the thing that people struggle with the most, because the early game, like the opening, I'd probably say like 45 minutes, it's not particularly challenging whatsoever. And then you beat what is essentially like the prologue tutorial area and things like, so this is like the follow-up area where you got the bike and stuff like that given to you, and the difficulty really does step up. Like it's a surprising leap because something happens in the plot that any rational person would try to resolve that immediately, even though the game kind of ushers you to be like, yeah, don't do that, go continue on elsewhere. And you're like, oh, but I'll take a shot at it, and it absolutely beat my ass. And I was like, okay. I love Souls-likes, but I'm not stubborn enough to dig in my heels and do something for like 5 hours just to beat a boss on principle. It'll just be like, okay, well, I'll come back later and do it. And yeah, this is another enemy where I was like, holy shit, this just doesn't seem to take really all that much damage in comparison to like the normal enemies. So yeah, there's definitely a big step up in difficulty, which is good. It's obviously good to not just walk through anything whatsoever. I'm sure there's an optimal way of beating this enemy, and I probably was not doing that. But as like with many things in a Souls, like it's all just trial and error and then learning from your mistakes and stuff like that. But I did not fail this beast. I ran away like a coward because holy shit, it was kicking my ass. So yeah, there's definitely big difficulty spikes in this game, and it's not afraid to slap you on the wrist. Alrighty, next up is another very easy fix, and I don't think this will probably bother all too many people because people don't. I'm a very, very dialogue centric gamer. Like, I want to listen, I want to read, and stuff like that. So, this game has an interact button for picking up items in the world, looting, and stuff like that. And in the infinite wisdom, they've tied that button to the move the dialogue forward button as well. So when you're out and about in the world with your companions and they're giving you tiny little tidbits of information or environmental storytelling, and you're sitting there picking flowers and it just throws the dialogue down as you're picking up the flower, and then it skips the dialogue. Oh boy, is that fucking frustrating. So yeah, that should be a very easy fix. Perhaps even falling upon my shoulders to maybe remap something. I don't know if there's like a separate button for push dialogue forward and picking up an item, or if they're both tied. If they're both tied, that's something that they do need to fix, and hopefully they'll do that soon. But yeah, as I said, this is only meant to be like an early first impressions thing. I think I covered everything I wanted. It's definitely a big ask for most people to pay full price for this. I will also reflect on that. I get it. Obviously, the climate now, it's very, very difficult to get things day one. So people do have to be very careful with what they pick. If you loved the first game, you will most likely love this game. It's a improvement in many, many, many ways, and it's much more ambitious. If you liked Elden Ring, there's enough crossover here where you'll also enjoy this. It's very, very Bandai driven anime, so expect very big breasts in similar ways to like Koei Tecmo. There was an early character which did genuinely make me laugh. I sent a picture to a friend and I was like, they must have maxed out the slider on this one, surely. So yeah, if that's not your thing and you find that stuff uncomfortable or alien of a concept, then it's gonna be kind of difficult to get into that here. But yeah, it'd probably be a good pickup for a sale later on down the line. Like, this is definitely a great, great addition to the genre as a whole. I don't think this is in any way cash grabby or lazy and stuff like that. Like, I've seen a lot of very, very harsh criticism thrown their way with how the performance is. Of course, it needs to be fixed. I'm not saying that doesn't have to happen, but it's not like they phoned it in and it's Code Vein 2 in the same way that Code Vein 1 was, where it was heavily corridors and stuff like that. Like, there's definitely ambition on display here. So try to give them a tiny bit of leeway, when it's that big of a jump. So yeah, that's all I'll be touching on. Didn't really take many breaks, so I feel like I've talked for ages. I don't know how long this ended up lasting. Hopefully not too long. 30 minutes. Damn. Right. That'll be it, I suppose. I'll probably I don't think I'll do like a follow-up to this. This will just be the next thing that I talk about this extensively will just be when I finished it. So it may be a few months from now. I don't foresee me finishing this up particularly quickly. But yeah, if you want to check in every now and then as to like what my progress is, it'll be posted on the sister channel, as I said. So yeah, be sure to go over and check that out. It's non-commentary, so you're not going to hear my thoughts in real time, unfortunately, if that's what you're searching for. But yeah, if you somehow stumbled upon here before Brandon, make sure to go check his channel out. In the description below, he does awesome solo stuff, and we do a fair amount of collaboration content together. And if you want to join a Discord with like-minded gamers such as yourself, make sure to pop a comment down below, and I'll hit you back with the link. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully if you end up checking this game out yourself, you enjoy it. And if not, hopefully you're just enjoying whatever else you're playing. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.